human ships arrived to pay a 200-year-old debt. The Vin Empire believed that a 200-year-old debt was just a dusty line in a history book that humanity had long since forgotten. They were wrong because they did not realize that for humans, a promise is not a suggestion and gratitude is a fuel that can jumpstart a dying star. The story really starts in the year 2157. Back then, humanity had never felt so small. Dr. Elena Rodriguez stood in the observatory on Lunar Base watching a massive asteroid through the telescope. It was 3 kilometers wide and made of solid rock and metal. It was heading straight for Earth, and the calculations were brutal. In 47 days, it would hit the Pacific Ocean with the force of 10,000 nuclear bombs. The impact would throw so much dust and debris into the atmosphere that the sun would be blocked for years. Most life on Earth was expected to die. Human technology was primitive back then. The nuclear missiles barely scratched the rock. The laser arrays on Mars were useless. We had evacuation ships ready for maybe 2 million people, but there were 8 billion souls on the planet. Elena closed her eyes, knowing that humanity had just learned to travel between planets 50 years ago. They had built colonies on Mars and the Moon, but they were small. Most humans still lived on Earth, and now Earth was going to die. Then 3 large objects appeared on the deep space scanners. They were bigger than anything humans had ever built, and they were moving faster than any human ship could travel. These were the Karani. They arrived in Earth orbit shaped like beautiful silver flowers with flowing curves. They sent a message in perfect English stating they knew of the danger and wished to help. But the help came with a price. The Karani were an old species and their time was ending. They only had 3 ships left and each carried a planetary shield generator. These were the last 3 working shield generators in their entire civilization. To save Earth, they would have to overload those generators, which would destroy their own defense and doom their remaining worlds to a slow decline. Ambassador Thulnara of the Karani met with human leaders in Geneva. She told them that her people had lived their time among the stars and that humanity was young and deserved its chance. She looked like a human grandmother with pale blue skin and silver eyes. She asked for nothing in return except to be remembered. Humanity promised they would. For 3 days and 3 nights, the sky lit up with beautiful blue-white energy as the asteroid was pulverized into harmless shooting stars. Before the Karani left, they gave humanity a small blue glowing crystal called a seed. It contained their language, their history, and their star charts. 300 years passed. Humanity grew, we spread across hundreds of worlds, we became the white noise of the stars, ubiquitous and useful but largely ignored. To the Galactic Council, we were the supreme middle managers, accountants, mechanics, and lab technicians. We were the cogs that kept the machinery of other empires running. For 30 years, we played the part of the grateful, slightly naive newcomer. During this tourist phase, human cultural observers were everywhere. They were the students in galactic universities who never missed a lecture. They were the workers on trading stations who negotiated contracts for months and shared drinks with their alien counterparts. They attended 3 separate diplomatic infrastructure tours of Nexus Station. They walked through the power distribution hubs and the atmospheric control centers. They asked seemingly innocuous questions about backup systems and relay redundancies. The Council assumed it was scientific curiosity. They were wrong. Following the Protocol Prometheus doctrine, human cultural observers were mapping every undisclosed power grid vulnerability while naively asking questions about maintenance schedules. This was the execution of a doctrine authored by Dr. Yale Oren, a military strategist who spent her career studying how smaller nations survived wars against larger ones. She wrote that they will eventually come for us, and humanity must be ready before the Council thinks humanity could possibly be ready. This patience was seen in every layer of human society. In the royal palace of Queen Xyleria on Aurelian, a human janitor named Daniel Carter slowly pushed his cleaning cart across the polished floor. Most people in the palace barely noticed him. They did not know that Daniel had once been a soldier on a world where the gravity was 3 times the galactic standard. He had failed his medical exam for the Earth Defense Force because of a minor heart arrhythmia, but he carried the same second skeleton of training as every human who stepped into the stars. Late one night, when the Queen returned early from a diplomatic mission, a coordinated assassination attempt was launched by a rebel faction. The palace security nodes were manually disabled. The Queen's 4 young children were left defenseless. Daniel Carter noticed the lights flicker. He knew the maintenance systems never malfunctioned. He did not call for backup. He moved. He reached the nursery and led the children into the narrow service corridors, places he had spent months cleaning. He took them to a small repair room in Sector C-17. He used a compact plasma cutter designed for repairing pipes as a weapon. He used an emergency battery to overload the door circuit, creating a shock trap. When the professional rebel soldiers arrived expecting to find frightened heirs, they found a human who treated the defense of those children like a problem that needed an efficient, permanent solution. Daniel took down the first wave of attackers using magnetic clamps and his plasma cutter. He was not fighting for glory, he was cleaning a board. When the Queen entered the room, she found her children safe playing games with the janitor behind a wall of storage crates. The galaxy looked at these incidents as isolated stories of human nobility. They missed the common thread. They did not see that every human, from the janitor to the ambassador, was a persistence predator who looked at danger and saw administration. This resilience was further proven during the Deathworld training sessions. Ryan Walsh was sent to Morty's 7, a Class 9 Deathworld, with a 47% mortality rate. The gravity would crush most biological forms, and the rain was sulfuric acid. While his alien counterparts struggled in powered exoskeletons, Ryan Walsh was unzipping his jacket because the air felt pleasantly cool. He walked across valleys of exploding gas pockets while eating a peanut butter sandwich. He explained that the key was to listen to the ground because it made grumpy noises before it exploded. When they encountered the screaming river filled with electric eels, the size of subway trains, the alien team prepared for a 6-hour crossing with full insulation suits. Ryan took off his boots and went for a swim. He convinced one of the giant eels to give him a ride by offering it part of his energy bar. At the Predator Academy on Outpost Drevok, another human named Maya Reeves was entering the Death Garden trials. This was a nightmare obstacle course that had claimed the lives of over 3,000 recruits. Maya was in the cafeteria eating an entire roasted bird with her bare hands. She told the concerned Commander Vixthal that hunger made her cranky. In the garden, she practiced tactical altruism, helping other recruits navigate the traps. During the final stage, the artificial intelligence tried to break her with guilt. She stood in the simulation and said, "No, this is not real. Even if it were wallowing in guilt would not honor them." She became the first recruit to lead a team through the garden with 0 casualties. This ability to bond with predators was seen again on Station Harmony. Dr. Ben Foster, a human veterinarian, was confronted with a dying Dravok. This was an apex predator from a death world. Protocol demanded humane termination. Ben Foster told the head veterinarian to lower the containment field. He walked into the enclosure without sedatives. He whispered, "Easy, buddy. I know everything hurts, but I can help." Against every behavioral model, the predator calmed down. Ben diagnosed 3 broken ribs and a punctured lung just by feel. He told the staff that scanners do not build trust. He pressed his forehead against the animal's skull and performed the surgery while the creature purred. He taught the alien keepers that love is the oldest medicine. But while we were healing monsters, we were also building our own. The Kavth hegemony decided to humiliate Earth by giving them an obsolete warship, the Gavathas. It was 4.2 kilometers of 200-year-old junk. Dr. Sarah Chen, a human aerospace engineer, looked at the ship and saw a skeleton waiting for muscles. Within 18 months, her team had cracked the alloy growth process. The Kavth had thrown away a knife, so humanity made it a sword. They remapped the targeting computers to human railguns and inserted human fusion drives into the alien magnetic confinement channels. They created Project Bastard, a hybrid nightmare that moved 8 times faster than any human vessel and could engage 12 targets simultaneously. When the Kavth eventually sent 7 current-generation warships to reclaim their property, the human ship met them. The engagement lasted 11 minutes and 40 seconds. They methodically disabled the external gravitational compensators, leaving the crews alive but helpless. Sarah Chen had repainted the hull with a new inscription, built by human hands from what others discarded, and then came the moment the galaxy stopped laughing. It began with the execution of a human child. A human girl 9 years old named Lily Chen was accused of contaminating the sacred waters of Velora. The council leaders wanted to teach humanity a lesson. Lily Chen stood calmly in chains. When asked for final words, she said, "My dad will come for me." The council erupted in laughter. They told her father was 3 star systems away. She replied, "I know, but he will still come, he promised." The blade fell on a live broadcast. The reaction from Earth was a communication blackout. Within 6 hours, every human merchant, student, and diplomat had vanished from known space. Trade stations like Terminus were left like ghost towns. In the human quarter, meals sat half-eaten on tables. A child's toy lay abandoned in a corridor, still playing a soft melody to no one. 27 minutes. That was the count. Every human asset in the galaxy had received a 3-word transmission. Somewhere in a ship moving faster than sensors could track Commander Sarah Chen stared at a photograph of her daughter and counted down the seconds. At the 27-minute mark, the silence broke. The human hidden fleet, built in secret beneath mountains and under polar ice for a century, rose into the sky. Black steel giants emerged from the oceans. Bases on the far side of the moon lit up with fire. The first observer fleet, sent by the Council, arrived at the edge of the solar system to find it empty. Then 30 human warships appeared from nowhere, surrounding them in a perfect sphere. These were warships larger and more advanced than anything in the Council registry. The human ships did not fire, they just cut the power to every Council vessel instantly. A female voice, calm and cold as deep space, sent a 4-word message: "Leave, do not come back." The Council didn't listen. They met the humans at the Battle of Sigma 7. 3,000 Council ships against 300 human vessels. Sarah Chen released the ghosts. 200 of the human ships were autonomous decoys designed to confuse and terrify. While the Council fought shadows, the real human warships targeted communication relays and command vessels. In 10 minutes, the Council fleet could not coordinate. The humans humiliated them. The Council lost the war in 27 days. It was during this era of awakening that humanity rediscovered the Karani. The Karani had faded. They became a remnant, hiding on a frozen world, orbiting a dying red star in the Sigma 7 system. They were down to a few thousand individuals. The Vin hegemony noticed them. The Vin were a proud reptilian species who believed that weakness was a crime. They wanted the Sigma 7 system for its minerals, and they viewed the dying Karani as an inconvenience to be cleared away. They issued a declaration of supremacy. They gave the Karani 72 hours to evacuate or face annexation. No one in the galaxy cared. The Vin were powerful, and no one wanted to risk war over a few thousand blue-skinned aliens. But then Captain Sarah Chen of the exploration ship Endeavour dropped out of hyperspace in Sigma 7. She saw the structures on the fourth planet. She recognized the silver metal and the flowing curves from the old records. She found the Karani freezing in heated caves. She met Elder Velta, the grandson of Ambassador Thulnara. When she realized who they were, she didn't call a committee. She sent a high-priority emergency transmission to Earth Command. On Earth, Ambassador James Chen was in the middle of a routine session of the Galactic Council. He was the descendant of the first president to meet the Karani. He wore the blue crystal seed as a pin on his jacket. When he received the report, he stood up in the center of the great crystal hall. The other species were laughing about the weak humans. James Chen didn't laugh. He told them that humanity never forgets a kindness shown in their darkest hour. He invoked Protocol Perseverance. It committed the full resources of Earth and all her colonies to the defense of the Karani. The Vin commander, a creature named Cassix, laughed. He told the galaxy that humanity was a species of merchants and accountants. He said their military was laughable. He should have looked at the history of persistence predators. The stars themselves seemed to tear open above the Karani world. One by one, human warships began to drop out of jump space. These were massive angular nightmares of compressed matter and rail gun batteries. Over 800 military vessels appeared in a perfect grid formation. But they weren't alone. Behind them came the civilian volunteers. Merchant ships abandoned their trade routes. Mining platforms left the asteroid belts. Over 4,000 human ships filled the void above the Karani world. It was the largest mobilization in galactic history, and it happened in less than 27 minutes. Admiral Ko Tanaka stood on the bridge of the dreadnought Titan. She told the Vin that the Karani were under human protection. She told them they had 5 minutes to withdraw, or they would be erased from the registry of living species. The Vin were arrogant. They fired a ranging shot. The human ships didn't just return fire, they moved like a single organism. They used relativistic kinetic weapons that ignored the Vin's energy shields. In 11 minutes, the Vin vanguard was reduced to expanding clouds of superheated gas. The human fleet didn't lose a single ship, but humanity wasn't there just to fight. They were there to pay a debt. While the military ships held the Vin at bay, the research vessels and mining platforms moved toward the dying star. Dr. Elizabeth Harper led the operation. She told her team that if the Karani could sacrifice their defense for Earth, we could sacrifice our energy for them. They manufactured specialized fusion injectors the size of skyscrapers. They stripped the gas giants in the system for hydrogen. They used controlled antimatter explosions to jumpstart the star's core. The galaxy watched on a live broadcast as a dying red ember was turned back into a brilliant yellow sun. The human fleet brought a star back to life. They didn't stop there. They deployed terraforming equipment across 7 worlds in the system. They melted the ice. They restocked the oceans. They turned a frozen graveyard into a garden paradise in a matter of weeks. Elder Velta stood on his new world and watched the Karani children play in the sunlight for the first time in generations. He asked Admiral Tanaka what they could possibly do to repay such a kindness. Tanaka just smiled and told him to build something beautiful with the life we helped you keep. Back at the Amphitheater of Worlds, the Grandmasters were forced to confront the reality of the Great Audit. For 30 days, the machine mind known as Catalyst had been processing data on every species. The hierarchy was forming exactly as predicted until the human scan. Usually, the scan was a smooth transition. But as Catalyst processed the human data, the massive turbines beneath the floor began to whine into a high-pitched scream. The crystalline pillars of the AI core began to glow a deep, bruised, bleeding violet. The number appeared and it burned into the air. Threat level 11. The silence that followed was absolute. Level 7 was the Oxaction warlord Grak, who had just finished his victory roar. Level 10 was a planetary extinction event, and 11 was a theoretical impossibility. Catalyst explained the logic. Humans do not adapt to environments, they force environments to conform. They rebuilding where destroyed. Performance increases with environmental hostility. Primary data marker. Spite. Warlord Grak rose from his seat, refused to accept that a creature who looked like a soft carbon-based template could be 4 tiers above him. He moved toward Representative Elias, his massive obsidian frame cutting through the light like a shard of midnight. He demanded an explanation for why a species with no natural weapons was rated 4 tiers above his own. Elias was currently squinting at a small plastic container, trying to peel the lid off a pack of earth-grown almonds. He looked bored. He finally got the almond container open with a loud pop that echoed like a gunshot. He looked up, noticing the billion eyes on him, and muttered, "Oh, is that us?" This classification, Grak hissed, his voice like stones grinding, places your species 4 tiers above mine. Explain the discrepancy. You possess no natural weapons. Your skeletal density is inferior. Elias looked up from his snack. He didn't stand. He rubbed the bridge of his nose and said, "To be honest, I think the machine is just looking at the logistics. I'm a desk jockey. I handle trade quotas. But if you're asking why we're dangerous, it's probably because we don't stop until the job is done." The AI's voice distorted into a harsh resonance. Warning, logic constraints exceeded, subjective adaptability skewing metrics, threat permanence, absolute, humans treat apocalypse as administration. The Grandmasters saw an opportunity to humiliate this upstart species by testing them against a tactical simulation. They selected the Shatterpoint scenario, a total collapse of a sector's infrastructure under an invading swarm. The best of them could hold the sector for 2 hours. Elias was invited to the Starlight table. He didn't look at the troop counts. He looked at the layout of the power grids and the supply lines. He saw the entire sector as a giant interconnected building that hadn't been cleaned in 3,000 years. He saw the undisclosed power grid vulnerabilities that human cultural observers had been mapping for decades under Protocol Prometheus. The simulation began. The swarm deployed. Elias waited for 4 minutes, his eyes tracking patterns. He wasn't thinking about war. He was thinking about how a hallway fills with dust if the ventilation is blocked. At the 5-minute mark, he began to work. His fingers danced across the holographic interface, but he wasn't issuing attack orders. He was rerouting power. He was shutting down non-essential sectors. He was closing valves. He was applying administrative logic. He used the Council's own maintenance schedules against them, triggering safety audits and software patches that froze the enemy's navigation systems in place. He used pattern recognition to identify where the off switch for the entire sector was hidden. He intentionally introduced spite into the equation, performing maneuvers that violated tactical logic. At precisely 11 minutes and 4 seconds, the simulation ended. The entire invading force had been neutralized, not destroyed by an armada but rendered irrelevant. They were trapped in a loop of compliance verification. Their engines were dark. Their weapons were locked. Their communication was jammed by a human electronic warfare package that interfaced with their power distribution systems. Daniel Carter, the former janitor now Royal Guardian, walked onto the floor and stood beside Elias. He looked at the Grandmasters, who were staring with pale faces. "There you go," Daniel said, his voice flat. "The sector is clean. You had a lot of redundant systems sucking up power and creating friction. I consolidated the grids. It's more efficient this way." Warlord Grak found his voice first. "You admit I could kill you in this room. You are soft." Daniel nodded slowly. "Yes, in this room you're the apex predator. On a hunt you're a level 10. But we are what happens after apex predators become inconvenient. We do not fight you for glory, Grak. We do not fight for honor. We find a solution that is cost-effective, efficient, and permanent." We make it so you simply aren't a factor anymore. We clean you up." The room was silent. For 30 years humanity had been the white noise of the stars, ubiquitous and useful and largely ignored. They were the galaxy's supreme middle managers and accountants. They were the ones who kept the machinery of other empires running while quietly mapping every vulnerability. This matters because we live in a galaxy that has spent thousands of years measuring power by the size of a fleet or the reach of an empire. The humans proved that true power is the ability to stand as an equal not through the size of your fleet, but through the mastery of the shadows. They remind us that the currency of diplomacy is not fear, but the ability to flip the off switch on a civilization before they even realize a hand is on the lever. The next time you see a human maintenance worker asking about your infrastructure or a human diplomat smiling through an insult, do not look at their lack of claws. Look at the 30 years of patience behind their eyes. Look at the iron in their blood and the war in their veins. Look at the way they map the vulnerabilities you didn't even know you had. They are the persistence predators who have learned to treat the end of the world like a Tuesday shift. They don't wait for permission to save people they care about, and they don't need your help to make that decision matter. Because the humans are already out here. They are in your universities, your hospitals, your shipyards, and your palaces. They are the doctors who whisper, "Easy, buddy," to your dying monsters. They are the engineers who turn your garbage into relativistic nightmares. They are the parents who will break an empire to find a child. Humanity has been falling and getting back up for 300,000 years. The galaxy mistook the falling for the end of the story. They never thought to look at what happened next. The humans were persistence predators not just in the forest, but in the halls of power. They chased the off switch for 30 years across every corridor and terminal in the galaxy. And when they finally flipped it, they didn't do it to rule. They did it so the galaxy could finally wake up. To further illustrate this administrative lethal efficiency, we must look at the Vithari Dominion conflict. The Vithari were an empire of 60 centuries, controlling 900 star systems with 42,000 warships. They viewed humanity as a minor species of traitors and polite diplomats. They sent a declaration of supremacy, demanding surrender and vassalage within one solar cycle. They assumed the humans would compromise or retreat, as they historically had in minor border disputes. Ambassador Ilara Voss, 63 years old and looking utterly unremarkable, received the courier. She smiled her warm, sad smile and told the young officer that war with humanity would not go the way the supreme warlord expected. She then activated Protocol Whisper. As the Vithari Grand Armada entered human space, every sensor they owned glitched for 0.3 seconds. In that heartbeat, the human AI Prometheus mapped every shield frequency, reactor output, and neural signature of every officer in their fleet. The Vithari encountered 37 human ships in the Corbin system and sent 500 to destroy them. The human ships moved in ways that turned the crews of the Vithari vessels into thin paste on their own bulkheads. They fired kinetic slugs at relativistic speeds, slugs that ignored Vithari shields because they were tuned to the exact harmonic resonance of those shields. In less than 4 minutes, 500 Vithari warships were expanding clouds of superheated gas. The humans had not lost a single ship. The Vithari responded with rage, summoning their entire remaining fleet of 27,000 ships. It didn't matter. They were walking into a killing box. The human fleet, hidden within the upper atmosphere of gas giants where no sensor could reach, rose in waves. They coordinated their fire like a single organism with 600 bodies. They dismantled the most powerful military machine in the galaxy in less than 2 weeks. When the human fleet reached the Vithari homeworld, they didn't fire. They offered terms that asked for almost nothing for humanity, only the freedom of the species the Vithari had enslaved. Warlord Korth, broken and confused, asked why they didn't take his world. Ilara Voss told him, Because we have been you, we know what it feels like to be the conqueror who realizes too late they destroyed what they were trying to protect. The galaxy finally understood. The humans were not peaceful because they were weak. They were peaceful because they were disciplined. Their silence was not an absence of power, but a choice of restraint. They built their military as a shield, not a sword, to ensure they would never be forced to become the monsters they once were. This is why humanity is the threat level 11. Not because they seek conquest, but because they have perfected the art of the off switch. They are the janitors who know your palace better than you do. They are the accountants who know your secrets better than your spies. They are the persistence predators who will chase a problem for 300 years and solve it in 27 minutes. If you want to understand what else humanity is hiding behind that disarming smile and that maintenance bucket, hit that subscribe button and stay tuned for the next report from the Congress of Shared Worlds. Drop a comment below and tell me, if you were sitting at that council table and the threat level hit 11, would you have laughed? Or would you have started counting the exits, peace through administration and preparedness through patience? That is the old human concept, and now it is the galaxy's new reality. I will see you in the next one. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more incredible stories. Hit the bell icon to stay updated on our latest uploads.